Glad to see you all. It seems we've got quite a few. Wow, the number of participants are growing every time I look down. Um, Thank you for all tuning in from home. My name is Tegan Jones. I'm from CAP. We also have Tim Brooks and Keno Holland from Fieldworks Architecture. I want to acknowledge the land that we are on, and as you can see, we're on all sorts of land at the moment. So feel free to acknowledge the land that you're on and feel free to share that in the chat. But on behalf of Contemporary Arts Precincts, we acknowledge the traditional owners and sovereign custodians of the land in which Collingwood Yards is situated and the peoples of the Woiwurrung and Bunurong language groups. We extend our respect to their ancestors and all First Peoples and elders past, present and future. So the way that this session is going to work, we're going to have obviously this intro, and Fieldwork will do a short presentation and then take us on a virtual tour of the site. And then after that, we'll have probably time for questions for Q&A for about 10 minutes. Unfortunately, we've been unable to live caption this session, but we will endeavour to try and send out a transcript or have a recording made available after the session is done. Just some brief bits and pieces about CAP, Contemporary Arts Precincts. We're a non-for-profit organisation, and our aim as an organisation is to create affordable space for hundreds of arts organisations and artists in the inner city of Melbourne. I'm the project manager for CAP, and obviously we're the organisation that's behind Collingwood Yards. And we've been set up to also create or to take this collection of derelict buildings that were on the site that belong to the Department of Education and turn that into a fit for purpose precinct. And we've got tenants ranging from PBS radio station down to a ceramics workshop with, retail shop frontage for an individual artist. We've had a very tight budget to put this together and have been funded by state government and philanthropic groups, probably you could say on the skin of an oily rag, and could definitely not have put this project together without the team of consultants such as Fieldwork, SBLA architecture firm and Reshape consultants, to name a few, and the contractor McCorkle Constructions, that really do feel like they came on the journey with us to create this space, and a lot of love and passion for the arts and what this precinct can represent to the community, both local and otherwise. As an introduction to Fieldwork, way back many years ago, it seems, there was a design competition of which Fieldwork won due to their ideas of social cohesion and how to create an arts community out of these existing buildings. And it is difficult that we are in a time where we're unable to celebrate the way that we want to after 4+ years, I think, from the development component. But we're very grateful that the technology like this virtual tour can exist so that we can at least share this in the context of the life that we're living right now. So that's enough from me. I'm going to hand over to Keno and Tim to do a short presentation.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is actually the first time I've put a shirt on for a long time. It's really lovely to be speaking to you all. Of course, I really hope the next open house next year, Tim and I can actually show you through the project in physical reality rather than this virtual sort of reality we're working in right now. I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to attempt to do a bit of a digital tour. But first, what I'd like to do is really show you some photos of the existing building. So post-colonization, the built history of this site is quite extensive. It was a courthouse for a while. Then it was council chambers. Then it became actually an art school, a Collingwood Arts School. And then from 1912 to 2005, it was the Collingwood Technical College. So it's got a long history of sort of long built history. And then it really laid empty from 2005 until, we were fortunate enough to start this sort of project. It's famous as the site of the Keith Haring mural. But I guess, for me, it's a project that's very close to my heart. We had just started Fieldwork. We were, I think, 2 years in, and I'm eternally grateful to Marcus Westbury and the rest of the Contemporary Arts Precincts board who selected us out of the design competition. And for me, it's been me and my team. It's been a real project of love. So the precinct itself is on Johnson Street. It's a bit of an unusual shape, sort of bounded by this little thick line here. Perry Street is over here, and up on the top right-hand side is Smith Street. It's got Circus Oz, who in 2013 built their sort of headquarters. And then we were tasked really with turning this cluster of buildings into a center for, I suppose, a place where creative industry could really come together. What we found, when we walked around the building at the beginning, was a building with beautiful textures, and it was a building that really needed some love. But what I really loved is the layers of sort of history that you could read into the building, the quality of light, and I guess a really big part of the concept that we came up with was to try and touch the buildings as little as possible. We really didn't want to interfere too much with the existing fabric of the buildings. Jane Jacobs, the sort of famous New York urbanist, speaks of this idea of urban mulch. The old buildings are like urban mulch, and the beautiful things can grow from this old mulch. And really, the buildings that we started with were this lovely sort of, lovely sort of urban mulch. And we really wanted to make sure that we could still maintain that kind of character with the new sort of interventions that we had to do. So we actually commissioned our friend Tom Ross, who's a local photographer, to do this photo essay for us, to really capture the sort of inherent characteristics of the building. And it allowed us as well, in the new parts of the building, or the new elements that we introduced to the building, to make sure that they were part of an ongoing narrative of the building. So things like selecting the colors and the details. We really wanted to blur the boundaries between new and old. There's also this beautiful courtyard in the middle, and I've been a resident in this area for 25 years, and I didn't know about this courtyard. So one of the big aspirations we had was to try and turn this precinct, which is quite sort of inward-looking, to turn it into a part of the broader neighborhood. So the main sort of architectural moves we made on the outside of the building were to really try and draw people through and make it a part of the broader Collingwood community, so that this courtyard becomes a community asset for everyone to enjoy. So the main Johnson Street facade, the main heritage facade, is kind of grand. It's got this big sort of symmetrical form with this grand Art Deco entry. And look, this says a lot of Art Deco things, but none of them are particularly welcoming. And we really wanted to make this a precinct that everyone feels welcome, that genuinely does feel part of the neighborhood. So that was one of the big challenges we had. How do we bring people into this precinct? And how do we sort of get that human connection through, and that very welcoming, making sure people felt welcome. So the first thing we did was challenged this sort of heritage overlay on the main facade and said, look, it's all very well, this is very precious facade, but how can we turn this into a piece of cultural infrastructure for the broader community? So we decided actually to punch a hole in the Johnson Street facade. So rather than having the main entrance through that grand Art Deco sort of entrance, we decided to put it over here on the right-hand side there, which is actually closer to Smith Street. And it also, if I show you this cutaway, so this is a cutaway of the ground plane, allows direct pedestrian access from Johnson Street into the new courtyard. And we worked with Simone Bliss from SBLA Landscape Architects on the public realm there. And, the idea really is to turn that into a civic space. And then at the back through to Perry Street, we've got a little connection via a laneway, and then through a little mini sort of shopping arcade, a little shop arcade there, and into the courtyard. So the philosophy that we, I suppose, established from the very beginning of this design is that where we made interventions into the existing building, we made them quite bold and strong. But the rest of the building, we tried to leave as intact as possible, to just really get it to a point where it's fully accessible, from the point of view of people with mobility needs, to make sure that from a fire and services point of view, it's really brought up to the 21st century. So what we then did is, how did we deal with vertical circulation, lifts, and external staircases? We actually put them on the outside of the building. So rather than putting this new infrastructure inside the old buildings and having to interfere too much with them, we put them on the outside of the building and try to turn them into objects of beauty in themselves. This section here shows the connection from Johnson Street on the right-hand side through that new pedestrian link into the courtyard. And this is a bit of an amphitheatre space that we designed with Simone Bliss, SBLA Landscape Architects, and then over here this new lift shaft that creates the connection up to those upper levels of the Perry Street building. This is the view, and you have to apologize that none of these are professional photographs. So this is just me walking around with my iPhone, or Tim walking around with his iPhone as well. So this is the main entrance now into the precinct. What we really wanted to do is to strip this of all sort of signifiers of building entry. We didn't want to make this feel like you're walking into an institution. I wanted to make it this kind of ambiguous but interesting space. So it's got this perforated stainless steel paneling on the sides. In the middle, there's these two brick columns, which we originally didn't intend to have there, but there are these two existing columns that, through the necessity of saving money through the construction process, we were asked to keep those. And at first I was just like tortured over this, thinking, what am I going to do about these brick columns? It's ruining our beautiful design. But then it occurred to us that if we gold leaf them, so if we actually transformed them into something, that it would still speak to the history of the building, the fact that these brick piers are retained there, but transforming it into something a little bit different. And so far, and unfortunately, because of the circumstances today, it hasn't been able to sort of fully open up and have a grand opening to the public. But I've actually sat across the road for like an hour and watched, and people actually do just naturally flow into this new entrance. It is very welcoming. It is ambiguous. Doesn't feel like you're entering a building. So that's certainly, our aspirations there. Then stepping into the central courtyard, you can see some of the lovely paving that Simone selected there. That picks up, I suppose, on those lovely autumn colours of the trees. You can see one of those new brick lift shafts. A diagram here really explaining how we took that new infrastructure. So the new lift shaft, tried to turn it into an interesting sculptural object, and it plugs back into the building. I've got some more images of this in a moment. So this is just a bit of a snap. You can see how that lift shaft sits through here and then connects back into those upper levels. This is me the other day. I was walking around. There's a really cute little dog. It's just me and the dog there the other day. No one else around. And then on the back of the Johnson Street building, a more sculptural sort of staircase form, and then the lift shaft. So this means that every single space in the whole of the Collingwood Yards is completely accessible for people with mobility needs. And also the idea with these is that they become in themselves places that perhaps people can inhabit in interesting ways that also have a bit of a dialogue with the existing building. There's a beautiful remnant of a mural by Rika Rennie in behind, and these little moments of golden glass which we incorporated to signify the new openings we created in the building. The form of the staircase was actually inspired when I was walking in the Yuyangs with my daughter, and I saw this Parks Victoria galvanized steel staircase wrapped around this boulder, and I just thought that was just wonderful. And so we applied that idea to this project, where we wanted those new interventions to be very clearly new, but of materials which will, mark the passage of time. So this is all very fine galvanized steel structure and cladding, and then these are some lovely bricks that we sourced locally. I'm going to now share I'm going to attempt to share my other screen, which has got on it the virtual tour. And as I go through, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Tim, who's our associate at Fieldwork and was the project architect for the delivery, really, of this project. So Tim, maybe I thought we're standing here in the main entrance to the Collingwood Yards. That's obviously Johnson Street over there. Whether you could talk a little bit about.
Sure thing. So hopefully everyone can hear me. I'm just having some internet speed issues, which is often the case with Zoom. I'll just wait for it to catch up a second.
Yeah, we're looking at can you see we're looking now at the brick column, Tim, with the gold leaf on it. So I thought you could maybe talk through how that was achieved.
Yeah, sure thing. So the gold leafing process, we got in touch with a fine craftsman who does this. Obviously, not often on a brick column for an external application, but he does lots of sort of finer grain work with picture frames and things like that, and more detailed. So we got him in, and we had this idea about the bricks, and you know we wanted to really work out, you know, how would this look? Would we be able to retain the finer grain texture of the columns? And he actually brought us in a doorstop that he uses, which is an old antique brick that he has, and he gold leafed it, and then brought that to the meeting to show us, and that made us a lot more comfortable in the fact that the texture and the grain and the history of the site would be retained, but sort of be really enhanced into this with this gold leaf process. So it's a Dutch gold, so not a 24 karat gold leaf, but it's a brass derivative, and it still comes in a sheet, and he applies that with a brush, and then coats that with a lacquer, like a marine grade lacquer, which comes on over the top, and he does a sort of a multiple layers of that in a sort of very dust proof environment, and then achieves that, you know, beautiful result.
Yeah, we should note, we had this sort of brainwave of gold leafing it, but then we looked into gold. Gold is pretty unsustainable and not a particularly sort of pleasant metal to have mined. And so, Tim was able to find this much more sustainable and more cost-effective solution. So what this connection between Johnson Street and the main courtyard does is it actually also opens up the ground floor of the Johnson Street building. You can see their bus projects, the gallery. If I step in to there, I hope it's not too laggy, but this is now standing inside the building. You can see we've also introduced new cable trays. We tried to use a palette of materials that I suppose are reminiscent of the original materials. We did go around and sample some of the colors of the paints, some of the flooring. So we did want to maintain a little bit of that kind of institutional feel. So a little bit of a plug as well. That's my wife's artwork there. So she's in the first show bus projects in their new location. I actually really enjoyed this moment where she's got her gold suit, which is part of her artwork, and our gold columns here on the right-hand side. Tim, I thought you could just briefly talk about the flooring material here.
Yeah, sure. So we, like Kino mentioned, the existing grain of the building is obviously very institutional, and we didn't want to remove references to that. So what we did was we looked at a marmoleum product, which is a really sustainable cork product, which is made mainly of linseed oil, I think. Yeah. And so it's obviously used in a lot of, sort of brings to mind school classrooms and those sort of things, which speaks, I think, to the history of the site really nicely. And I guess what we wanted to do is kind of amp up a bit of the colour of that to sort of really contemporize the spaces. So the central corridors where we did touch, and we did bring up those colours and enhance that idea of the institutional, but then inside the tenancies we left them much more simpler as a blank slate for the tenants to come in and fit out as they wanted.
That's right. I've just been told we've got 4 more minutes, so I'm going to try and move through these reasonably quickly. This is standing really at the back of the Johnson Street underneath that sculptural staircase. And, we introduced things like new balustrading, new handrails to try and get these buildings up to code, but, use colors from the existing building, I suppose, to try and blur that line between the new and the old. some of these beautiful spaces that are yet to have the tenants move into. So this is out in the public realm that we work on with Simone. You can see this beautiful paving pattern. She did over here a bit of an amphitheater type space up there. So that's at the bottom of the amphitheater. It's way here. If you're in person, you'll see it's all really lush, beautiful landscape there as well. Over here, Tim, could you maybe talk just quickly to the sort of strategic demolition works we did through here, and the impact of that had?
Yeah, so what we're looking at is the Perry Street building now, facing the other side away from Johnson Street. And this building had some enclosed, all of the where there's now external walkways, they were all enclosed with glazing, as sort of as a winter garden sort of effect. And in the upper levels, we really wanted the upper level tenancies to have a connection to the courtyard and to connect to the other building. So by removing the glass, we turned that corridor into an external corridor, so it feels a lot more part of the public realm as well and has that dialogue.
That's right. So this is now the corner where we opened up that new connection through to Perry Street. There's a lovely ceramic studio. There's Uro Bookshop over there, and Licorice Pie, a famous record shop that's moved in. Bit of a rainy day you can see here, but you can see that sort of lovely arrival into this new courtyard space over here. This is those formerly enclosed corridor spaces, which we removed those windows, which Tim mentioned previously. So on the right-hand side is West Space Gallery. And you can see on a sunny day, it's a really lovely spot to sit and enjoy. A view here, really looking back towards the lift shaft. I should note as well, it's got these programmable LEDs that wrap around all the perimeter there, so that they actually uplight at night, and that's all interlinked with it's programmable with the other two lift shafts and the Johnson Street connection, so that we can put on a really beautiful sort of light show. And these cantilevered elements really are about being able to go out there and not just being circulation spaces, but spaces that people can inhabit. Someone's put a little chair out there to sit in the sunshine as well. And then the last image, because I think we're out of time now, is really an example tenancy. So maybe, Tim, do you want to talk briefly to this tenancy space here?
Yeah, sure. This is on the upper level of the Perry Street building, which is one of the CAP studio spaces. And these are a series of sort of smaller spaces which can be cohabited with a few artists or just a single artist. And yeah, it's really, I guess you can see here, the idea was to freshen up the spaces. They were given a fresh paint, and all of the floor was refurbished and made level, and any loose floorboards were replaced. But really to make the spaces adaptable to the tenant and how they wanted to use the space.
Terrific. Well, that was a very, very quick tour. I'm sorry that we didn't have viewpoints on everywhere. It was mostly focused on interior spaces. But look, it is an open public facility, so I certainly urge you all, when you do have an opportunity, to please go there and visit, because this is very much a piece of cultural infrastructure. It's designed for people. It is about the people there and the amazing mix of tenants that Tegan's and her team have put in there.
Thank you both. Thank you, Kino and Tim, for taking us on a very quick tour. The link to this virtual tour is now in the chat, so please, after this, feel free to go and explore away. It's really quite fascinating way to look at the site, and then you can go in person later down the track. So we've got about 5 minutes left for questions. So please, you can click in and type in your questions, but probably to kick us off while we're waiting for some questions from our audience. A question for you, Kino and Tim, is the role of heritage playing in the redesign and the development, especially with the Keith Haring mural there as well, but also across the rest of the site?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the Keith Haring mural has got, very restrictive controls over it. So we really try to touch it as little as possible. We sort of, our main, I suppose, approach to heritage is to say, okay, what does the heritage overlay say? And it had a heritage control on the main facade to Johnston Street. But we were able to enter in really productive dialogues with the relevant authorities and saying to them, look, there is this heritage overlay, but how can we turn this into a piece of cultural and community infrastructure if that current existing facade, the entrance through the main Art Deco entrance there, doesn't really serve the purpose of being a welcoming sort of a space. So we were able to convince them to allow us to open up that new connection through the building. And I'm very grateful that we were able to do that, because that has really meant that this can become a more genuinely public realm. In terms of the rest of the site, there wasn't heritage controls on the interiors of the building, but what we did is we took the decision to try and interfere with them as little as possible. We really want to try and maintain kind of character and grain of the building as much as possible.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Kino. We've got quite a few questions here, so I'm going to try and get to them as quickly as possible. One is, I assume I click answer live. So we've got here, do they plan to have a mix of tenants, i.e. food and retail, as well as artist spaces? I can answer that one. Yes, absolutely. We do. We have quite on the upper ground level, so where you can see in that courtyard, there is a specific hospitality tenant, so we hopefully have food and drink outside of that one. Yep, where the cursor is showing there. We also have some more other hospitality spaces in the basement of that Perry Street building, as well as in the rooftop of the Johnston Street building. And on the other side of the courtyard, a coffee place. So at the moment, we're still talking to potential tenants for those spaces. As you can imagine, with COVID, it's kind of put a dampener on things, but we obviously, I think in time, we'll have tenants within those spaces really activating that upper ground level. We've got here 2 questions about landscaping, which I might just bunch up together, which are there any landscaping works proposed for the courtyard, i.e. grass for people to sit on and enjoy? And then why no more greenery was not introduced? At this stage, for us, the landscaping works, aside from the hard surfaces, is part of the existing project. Greenery is coming. It's something we've got a sort of initial stage of greenery to be added in smaller spaces. But overall, that the courtyard, as you can see in there, is not finished as yet. For the moment, that's probably where it will sit until we are able to get more funding to be able to transform the courtyard into our ultimate vision, which SBLA has designed and has been, signed off by council. So that's sort of, I guess, the next phase of this project. I'm moving quickly. We've got.
We should know just with the landscape as well. So, we'll see over the years Simone's ultimate vision sort of realizing itself, but we have been able to maintain these 3 beautiful big trees. So during, spring and summer, there's a huge amount of greenery there. And also in dialogue with the owners of the next door building, we're able to hang on to this wall that wraps around the courtyard, and it's got these lovely creepers growing up. So while we're waiting for Simone's next stage of landscape, we still do have some lovely greenery to enjoy as well.
Yes. We've got a question in the comment section. Do we keep any murals from the intermission project prior? Yes, you've seen a couple of Tom Gerald's ones there, Gerard, sorry. And they are hidden. They are hidden in amongst, we've kept some in the CAP's office. So we're up on the top floor of Johnston Street building. We've kept some in there, and also in our shared meeting spaces as well. Try to keep them wherever we can. We've got a question regarding improving insulation and air tightness of the building and double glazing to avoid thermal bridges, adding insulation. So a bit of a technical question for you guys at Fieldwork.
I'll hand over to Tim for that one.
Sure thing. Yeah, we did really concentrate with a limited budget. We did concentrate a lot on the thermal envelope in where we could and where it was best placed. So with the budget of the project, we weren't able to replace all of the existing windows with double glazing, which we would have loved to, but it just wasn't. I guess we had to be targeted in use of the budget. So we did concentrate a lot on a lot of the ceiling sealants used in there to help improve the building envelope, and where we made new insertions as well, to really concentrate on the sealing of the openings in those locations. So where possible, we addressed that as much as we could. But given that it was an existing building and the scope of the building, we had to concentrate where we could.
Yep, thank you, Tim. We've hit time, so great we were able to answer at least a few questions there. So thank you to everyone for participating, especially Kino and Tim for their time and putting together a presentation. From our viewers and participants in this session, thank you for joining us. We will definitely invite you all to come and see us in an event in real life next year. And just finally, please tune into Bus Radio at 4:10, so in 8 minutes' time. We'll put a link in the chat for you guys, where to experience the artist's perspective of the design and development process, as Shannon Goodwin, who's the Director of Bus Projects and Composite, interviews Jane Crapsley from the Centre of Projection Art, both of which are resident organisations at the Collingwood Yards, about her work, Change in Condition. So thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your Sunday. And we'll see you later.
Thank you.